Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher. And this week, this is going to be maybe my most interesting episode today. This is a film that is honestly, because every episode I've done before this has all been very mainstream, well known stuff, stuff like Titanic and Get Out and and Rear Window and all these big famous films. But this is perhaps one of the most obscure films I will ever cover for this show. Um, yeah, this week we'll be covering the South Korean film Spring, Summer, Autumn, Winter, and Spring. So I'm basically this is going to be a bit of a different episode because I've done before. Well, as you can tell, it's just me doing this episode this week. So in the past, I've done a couple like solo episodes of the regular show, and then I've done some other individual episodes. My everything I've watched this month episodes, which I'll be having one released soon. Actually, I think I'm recording this the day before the new one should go up. And occasionally, if I'm not able to get a film to get a film for an episode, I will just do like one of my lists. But I think for the next, I'm gonna try and keep it primarily like film discussions. And if I can't get someone to record, it will just be me recording the episode, which isn't always the most entertaining because my voice gets sore, and I'm sure it must be somewhat boring to keep listening to my voice every week. But I've got some episodes planned with some other people. Hopefully, gonna have some stuff planned, and hopefully, I don't know how likely this is, but hopefully, probably next month, maybe the month after, I will be getting an episode out with a very hopefully. This is I do say hopefully because who knows, stuff can change, but I will be maybe having a pretty a not somewhat major guest, but I'm not gonna say any names or sorry, just take my jacket off. I'm not saying anything. I'm not gonna confirm anything because basically anything can happen, and that episode that might not happen. So I'm not gonna say anything yet. But this week I will be talking about this film. And if you haven't seen it, it's free on YouTube, so you can go watch it. Right, you can pause this episode, go watch the film, and then come back and finish listening to this, or not. This is I will say this. I'll sort of go through various parts of the film and sort of the whole metaphor, because this is a very metaphorical film that really focuses. There's very little dialogue in the film, and then the version I was watching on YouTube that I found, I did have subtitles, but I think this is a film that doesn't require dialogue. Like if you took the dialogue out, the story still works. Like it could just be like a silent film. I'm actually going. I should before I talk more about the film, I should give you some history on the film and sort of how I came to it and how I heard of it, and yeah, and if you want to watch the film after this, I guarantee, even if I tell you what happens, I'm not really spoiling it. You still will learn. Like the film's still worth, even though you know what happens. But if you want to go watch the film, you can and come back to this. That's totally fine. So, well, how did I come to this film? And yeah, so I should say first off, I like foreign language cinema. So by that I mean, of course, non-English cinema, because I primarily watch English films with English speaking characters. I have seen some foreign films. I've seen Parasite. I've seen Farewell. I've seen The Hunt, which I'm a massive fan of, and I've seen a couple other things. But I haven't seen a massive modicum and a massive range of foreign films. I've got like lists of like foreign films that I need to watch because they are, some of the best for cinema is foreign language. But this was a film that I always it's I didn't know much about. So I first heard about it from someone, a podcaster, who I think I've mentioned before. He's one half of the Diminishing Returns podcast, Sol Harris. And so go check them out, and yeah, support them on Patreon and stuff, or just go check out their show. So he has a list on their website of his 100 favorite films of all time, and that film was on the list. And I knew, because when I first looked at that list, I knew what a lot of the stuff on the list was. Like I'd either seen it or I'd had heard of it, and it was like, real classics. There was like, real classics on there. And there were a handful of films that I hadn't heard of before, and this was one of them: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. Or in some variations, it is called spring, summer, fall, winter, and spring. But I say autumn because we don't call it fall here in Australia. And I'd also heard of this film from another podcast, an Australian podcast called the Pool Boys Recommend podcast. One of the guys, so basically what they do is they recommend a podcast for each other to listen to. Not a podcast to listen to, just a thing for them to do. And so one of them had recommended to one of them to watch this film. And so I'd heard of it then as well. And I knew it was a film that I had to sort of be in the right mood for, and I had to, because this is a film that you should really watch in one sitting. You shouldn't pause in between, because I don't think it is as effective or works as much. So I'll give like the basic premise, and then I'll just take down some sort of major points. So the film was directed by Kim Ki-duk, I think it was, who is I think a very well-known South Korean filmmaker. He's very good. I know a lot of his films. Three Iron is also free on YouTube that I've heard is good and I will watch as well. Um, so this film really, it's so I'll give you the yeah. So the basic premise is basically it takes place over those 5 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. And so the film it starts. So basically, it sort of follows the journey of two characters. It follows this. So the film opens with just a young boy and an old monk, and they live on a monastery, as a monastery. And basically, it sort of tracks the journey of these characters and what they do. And so basically, spring. So it starts with the main character as a young boy. Then summer, it jumps ahead 10 years or so. So he's a teenager and he's still that, and it's in summer. Then it jumps another 10 to 20. It said that like each it's split into those 5 chapters, and so there's like a title card of each chapter, and then so it's like each chapter starts the same way. So it has a title card of the season, and then it's a pair of doors that open to reveal the monastery, and it changes depending on the different seasons. So like there's a platform they stand on in spring. Then as it gets progressively closer to stuff like fall, winter, and autumn, the water level has risen, so the platform is just completely covered in water. And so it just sort of is a very metaphorical, analytical state what these of these people, well, of these two characters really. So I made a lot of notes for this. Um, so I think what I might do is just go through some notes. I'll go for sort of basic stuff first, and then I might go into some deeper points. So first of all, I would say that all the performances in it are really good. Um, and like there's a kid actor. So in the first season is spring. We have a young kid and this old monk, and so sorry. And the kid actor is really good. He there's very little dialogue, as I say. There is very little dialogue. Um, so yeah, it starts with him as a kid, and I think he gives a really good performance. and I'll get back to him later because there's sort of an overarching like sort of character thing with him. And so actually I might just go through each of the seasons and just sort of talk about what happens and just sort of my general over like thoughts. So yeah, so it starts off in spring, and so this kid, this young boy and this old monk, they live in a monastery together, and so the kid wakes up and so yeah, so the kid wakes up and he is very much like he's a bit of a crappy kid, honestly. He does some this film, I will say, I'm just gonna be completely honest. I'm just gonna be completely honest. Right up front, my feelings about this film. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was very, very good. And I thought it was a film that I might not like because it might be a bit too arty, a bit too pretentious, a bit too like metaphorical for the sake of it, and it doesn't really enhance the story per se. The film, yeah, so it opens with this kid and this old monk and this place they're in, and we see. Well, first off, right off the bat, there is absolutely beautiful cinematography. Like like it's some of them. Like it seems that like a lot of foreign language films have some absolutely amazing cinematography, and I just think this has got some of. It's just so good. It's just absolutely fantastic. Um, so guy, this kid. So him and the old man, they go around and they pick like plants and stuff, and they're doing all the things. They're praying and everything, and then well, there's lots of animals like snakes and fish and spiders, and the kid runs into he's like picking these plants, and then a snake is like coming towards him, and he just picks up the snake and just throws it away, and I'm like, Jesus, like I would like to think that wasn't a dangerous snake that they had that kid throw, but also based on other things that they do in the movie, it might be it might have been like possibly a dangerous snake to that kid. So we see him and he's being admonished because he picked, I presume, like the wrong kind of like herbs that they're after. And then the next day, this kid, he gets a piece of string and a rock and he ties it to a fish, a frog, and a snake. And like the most insane thing is that it's actual animals he's doing this to. Like there are he is tying a rock to an actual fish, to an actual snake, to an actual frog. And it's just like what? Like that is insane. Like you can't do that anymore. And I should say this film was made in I believe 2003. So like that's very interesting that this film from the early 2000s has got like actual animal cruelty in it. Like that's really just like that's really effed up. Like that they would have it that they would actually do that. That's the crazy thing too. And like it's just insane. So the kid does this, and the entire time the old monk is like watching him do this. Like the old monk is like keeping an eye on him and being like, "Oh, you're doing this, huh?" And then the kid, this makes it's really funny, but it makes sense, and it's very much the film, like I say, is incredibly metaphorical. Like there's so much metaphor that I probably haven't even gathered from this first viewing. Um, the kid has a rock tied to him, and he wakes up, and somehow this he gets the rock tied to him, and he doesn't notice. But like, who cares? That doesn't matter. It's not important. That's not like important for the story. And so the kid wakes up, and he's told basically he's got to go, find those animals and free them from the rock, or he will. In fact, I've got the quote written here. He will. The quote is, "He will carry the stone in his heart forever." Which is a metaphor if the animals die, that he will always have that, sort of stone in his heart of killing those animals. So he finds the animals. The fish has died. The fish has died. So you know, he buries the fish. He then finds the frog. The frog is alive, and so he, unties the frog, and the frog continues on. And then he finds the snake, which is like super dead. Like it is like it's like just really just goodness. It is just, oh my goodness. It's just it's so bad that like this happened in the 21st century. Like actual animals were killed for the sake of a film. Like that's just nuts, isn't it? It's insane. It just, oh my goodness, it's so nuts. Then this kid, after he sees the snake, he starts to cry, and he's really good at it, and it makes me super uncomfortable because kids upset or in pain or something really just like gets under my skin, and I just don't like it, and it just makes me feel like gross. I'm like, ugh. So like that is the end of the first chapter, and like so the film also, I will say, has minimal locations. Like like we only see like the monastery and like the surrounding forest. All we see in this film. All the film is, and we have minimal characters. Primarily the boy and the monk, and the dialogue is just as minimal. It's basically non-existent. Mostly, I honestly think this film didn't even need dialogue. It could have worked without the dialogue. So then we move on to the next season, which is summer, which is about it doesn't make it obvious how much time has skipped, but the kid is now he's a teenager, and so the first thing, like the first time we see him, he's just watching coon snakes just like going at it, and I'm just like, geez, like, because I mean, to be fair, it's just him and this like old monk, like he can't like there's like it's just those two people. That's all he is living with, and I think they've actually got a pet as well. Actually, I'll say that, but do anything with that pet. So yeah, and then we're introduced to another couple characters. This girl and her mother who come to visit, basically, and so they take her in, and the boy, he's getting all like a little antsy because he thinks she's very pretty, and it's just like, and it makes sense because of you know and it's not even like it's unrealistic. Like it is incredibly realistic that this guy probably never seen another, who's never seen someone of the opposite gender in his life, is like, you know, like what's the word I'm looking for here? So attracted to this girl because he's probably never seen a girl before, and so they, several times, do it. And one time they do it right by the monk, like the Buddhist monk, and it's just like, well, that's just, ugh. That's just like, why? That's just really weird. And then one time they do it in the boat and they get caught. So instead of the monk just waking them up or anything, he just like pulls like a plug. He just like makes a hole in the boat and it starts to sink as they're like in the boat. And so they wake up and they have to get out, and then she's sent away because of, I believe, of like the Buddhist religion. So then he goes after her, and so that is the end of Summer. That is the end of that part of the film. And I was making notes as I was watching this film, but I was trying like because I made a lot of notes, and I will say for the last two seasons for winter and for spring, I didn't make notes. I don't have notes, so I'm gonna just like because of I was just so enthralled and so invested in the film that I just didn't have notes. But I can talk about them. It's just I don't have notes to read off of. So the boy leaves with the So the girl's sent away, and the boy leaves, leaving the monk all by himself in the monastery. Monastery? Jesus, the monastery. And yeah, so that's the end of that season. And there's autumn, and again, as I said earlier, each season has a title card for the season they're in, and then it opens on the doors, the swinging doors on the air, and the water level has risen because of the time of year and everything. So the platform is now like there isn't like you can't see like if you step on the platform, you will be like in ankles will be. So now the old man is he also through each of these seasons you can see him progressively aging. In each season, he's getting progressive. Like the hair is changing, it's getting older, and so this is very much a good way of showing like progression in age because if you don't know what the song's really about you just see also it says it's summer and then you can tell that like well there's the total color it says summer but you can tell like the water level is different and everything and you also can tell so it's a very good way of sort of moving through time and such. So the old man now has a white cat, and so he's reading like a newspaper and everything and about this man who has murdered his wife. And the only reason I know about this is because of that podcast I mentioned earlier where they talk about this. So but like the crazy thing is if you haven't seen if you don't know what it's about, you don't know anything that happens in the film, and you can't read Korean and everything, it doesn't matter because like you find out anyway that he did this. And so the boy the boy comes back. He's now a man, and he's got the knife is still bloody for some reason. I think it's like a metaphorical you know he's sort of left with I guess blood on his hand, blood on his hands I guess, and he's sort of coming back with this bloody knife to sort of and it's also to help the audience along if they don't know what's happened, if they're not exactly sure, they haven't put the pieces together yet, that this is the kid for this, and it's the kid from earlier because why else would he return? And I just like this sort of metaphor of like he left that monk lifestyle and he became a murderer, and so now he's come back to sort of I guess pay for his sins, repentance I guess if I use that word correctly, I don't know. So he then tries to kill himself. He puts paper over like his face, like his eyes and his mouth and everything, so that he will suffocate. But he's caught, and then he's beaten repeatedly with like a bamboo stick because the master that doesn't want him, like he doesn't deserve that kind of death. He shouldn't commit suicide to get out of what he did. He should instead like die an honorable, not an honorable death, but a different kind of death. So he's then hung from the roof, not by his neck, by like his arms or something. So then he falls down and he gets this knife, this blood covered knife, and just like cuts his hair off, and then you're just sort of like, well, and I was watching it, and I was like, well, what is this? What is he doing? And then you realize that he's like returning to that monk, the Buddhist lifestyle, and so he cuts the hair off, so he's got like basically a buzz cut, basically. And I was just thinking that the knife still has blood on it, And I sort of like that symbolism, that metaphor, I guess, if you will, of like he's using, this bloody knife that he killed his wife with is, also like he's bringing that, he's sort of using the weapon that killed his wife to sort of bring himself back to the lifestyle, sort of the symbolism you could interpret from that. Now, again, there's even more animal cruelty in this. Well, it's not as bad because an animal doesn't die, but the cat that the old man has gotten from earlier, he's dipping its tail in ink and is painting various like Korean characters over the over like the monastery. And it's just like, Jesus, what is this film with like goddamn like animal cruelty? Like, and it's just like, and it's just like, why are they doing this to this poor cat? Sorry. Sorry. So they're doing this, and and just before this, actually, sorry, we see two police officers um who are like been chasing after the guy who killed his wife, and so then they come to the monastery and they're gonna arrest him and everything, but they're gonna be arresting him and everything. But before they do that, the kid, the boy, I'm gonna call it the boy. Then so I'm actually just doing a little quick search up. Basically, so it says what they are carving into is the Heart Sutra, which is a popular sutra in Mahayana Buddhism, and it basically said form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So it basically is saying, um, I'm just gonna quickly do like a quick read, find a summary of this thing. But so they find the guy and they're gonna arrest him, but before they do, he carved. So basically, the old monkey's he's painting all the symbols now with this cat's tail. This poor cat, and the cat is like trying to escape. It is like scratching and clawing and meowing and everything. And so that the oh sorry, but then the guy is also using his knife to carve like each of them out onto the wood and basically sort of, I guess, pay for what he did to repay somewhat. And so it says here it's the so like I said, it's the Heart Sutra, and it is basically like, I don't really know how to say it. I'm not really sure. A it's sort of like, it says here it's basically a extremely briefly yet highly influential distillation of the essence of Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom writings. So yeah, that's basically what it is. And he carves this out, and he's to repay for what he did, and then he is taken away and arrested by the police. And then there's the sorry. Then the monk, because he's very old, he hopped on a boat, builds like gets pieces of wood, lights it on fire, tapes the paper to his face that we saw earlier in the film of the guy trying to kill himself with, and he just burns himself. And then there's symbolism of a sea snake that like swims away. I to say that he has been reincarnated as a sea snake, which is a very famous like belief in the Buddhism religion that um, when people die they are what's the word, not reanimated, re what's it called, they're brought back, as sea snakes. I believe, I think it was to the effect of like, it was something to that effect, like can't think of the word right now. Ah, damn it. I really cannot think of what this word is, but they're brought back, I guess, in a different life as a sea snake. Man, I cannot say that correctly. Then we move on to winter, and this might not be because I'm just talking about the film and what happens, but I think, like, honestly, I think it's a very interesting film to discuss. And in future, I might do a redux, a proper episode with other people talking about this film, because honestly, I think this is, there's so much discussion we could get from this. We could get like a 2 hour episode out of this, like positive. So then we come back to winter, and more time has passed, and the lake is frozen over. There's water. It's all frozen over. There's ice, there's snow, and everything. And so the guy returns, and he goes back in, and he starts taking up the trainings again. And there's a snake in there. I presume to be symbolism for the old monk who used to live there. And so the snake is still living in that place as this you know this guy. And so then the guy finds all these martial arts books, and he starts. There's like a montage of martial arts, which is a bit strange, and I think is like a bit of a weird choice for this film, considering how kind of not to say it's silly, but it just feels a tad out of place in this film. I don't know why. I just think it does, personally. Then we meet this person, this unidentified person, and I am saying person because we legitimately don't know who they are. We cannot see their face. Like, their face is covered by like a purple, um, like, how would I put it? Like, it's a purple like piece of fabric or something. So you cannot see their face. And I've heard sort of interpretations that it doesn't really matter, that the gender or race or identity of the person doesn't matter because it's not important to the story. And I would argue it isn't. It's probably a woman based on just like the voice and how they sound and everything. They just because there are noises that they make, but it's primarily, and it sounds like it's a female voice, but that doesn't matter. And so then and so then she's got a baby with her as well, and then she leaves the baby with this monk on the monastery, and so then she leaves. And earlier on in this um part in winter, we see the guy, the boy. He like digs a hole in the ice to get water from, and like to wait, and like when he waits, and then when he like washes his face with it, she doesn't notice this and falls in, and is it dies. I think is a tad silly, personally, and so then the child realizes this, and so then the child is like crawls out and escapes from the place and is about to fall in, but then is rescued by the guy, and he leaves like sort of a what's like the word I'm looking for? A memorial, I guess you could say. He fishes the body out with like a giant stick, and then he leaves a sort of a memorial, I guess, for it. Then it's one of, I think, probably my favorite scene of this of the film is the guy, and so he ties a rock to himself. So he basically gets like a rope and ties like a decently sized rock. It's not like it's a massive rock, but it's like decently sized to the point that like it would be heavy to lug around. So he ties it to himself, and so he ties the rock to himself, and he starts like I built which is a reference and a callback to earlier the three animals that he tied rocks to earlier in the film: the fish, the frog, and the snake. And so he ties the rock to himself, and he starts like climbing up this mountain. I believe to sort of, I guess you could say, reach inner peace. Um, and so he does this, and so he's doing this, and I also, while I was watching this scene, there was a specific thing, a sort of a what's like, I'm trying to sort of speak, try to sort of give, try to like, as I was watching this, I had a sort of unique interpretation of sort of my interpretation of what it is. I highly doubt it was meant to be taken this way because it's like Norse or slash Greek mythology that my sort of interpretation is based off, and in fact, it is on the Wikipedia page here it says and so basically and so basically he it says here that this him doing this to sort of complete this well because also like he's like training and everything sort of for self-discipline I guess, and he ties the monastery's large circular stone, like a circular stone, to his body, and it says here it is emblematic of the Buddhist Bhavakra, which is the wheel of life and rebirth. And he takes the statue and he sort of goes on and he's reflecting about the animals that he tormented. And he also takes the statue that we see earlier in the film that so the girl who visits him early on, that he gets it on with, she's sitting on the stone, and I believe he tells her to move because it's like an important thing, and she sits on it later and he doesn't tell her to move, and then it's sort of a nice culmination of the story of him of taking the statue with him and leaving it on the top, overlooking the monastery. And I I also took an interpretation that like, well, not an interpretation, but more something that it reminded me of was of Sisyphus, who is a basically this guy who was punished in the underworld by the god of Zeus, and he has to basically continuously roll a boulder up a hill for eternity. And just before he gets to the top, it drops, and he has to go get it, and he just keeps doing that. And that was sort of a correlation, I guess, and slash interpretation, I guess you could say, that this film also has, that this film sort of features. And I highly doubt it was intentional because, like I said, it's like a Zeus thing, and Zeus is like a bit, and then that's like a Greek Norse thing. But that was just something that sort of reminded me of it. Sort of this guy who is he punished because there's some times where he falls and he drops it and he falls and he loses it and he falls down the hill, and sort of like, well, will he go get it or will he just give up? And that's sort of what Sisyphus is. But he can't give up, and he just has to keep doing this for eternity, and that's just sort of, I think the correlation that I don't think was intentional, but I just sort of got in my mind. And so then we move on to the final season, and spring again. So the baby that we witnessed earlier is now a young boy played by, I believe, the same young boy who we saw at the beginning of the film, who once again is tormenting more animals. This time he finds a turtle, and he's tormenting the turtle. He's like rapping on the shell, and he's like he. Then this time, instead of tying a rock these animals, he forces a rock into their mouth. So he puts one in the fish's mouth. It like upends itself because it's like overbalanced. The frog has got one. It can't let go. It's on the snake's mouth and everything. And these scenes, by the way, apparently when this film was released in the US, those scenes were deleted, which makes sense because they're very disturbing. And so it's basically the cycle continues. It's sort of this sort of vicious cycle, I guess you could say, continues, and then the film ends. So, yeah, it's a really really good film. I really really enjoyed it. I talked to a couple people about this after I watched it, and I said that I will probably watch this film like a handful of times in my life because it's a film that like I probably wouldn't want to watch all the time because it's a bit because it's very philosophical, it's very metaphorical, and not that I don't understand that, but it's like that's like I'm not always feeling in the mood to be super philosophical about something. Plus, I just think I just feel a bit uncomfortable at times. But like, besides that, like, it is a remarkably made film. Beautiful cinematography, great acting. The very limited like sets and production design the film has are all fantastic. Everything, all the interpretations that can be taken or given on the film is remarkable. But it is being held back by the fact that there are a handful of scenes that I didn't like. It made me feel a little uncomfortable. But beyond that, this film is fantastic, and I give it a 9 out of 10. So, yes, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you feel interested to go watch this film, it's just search for it. It's free on YouTube, and if you can't find one with the subtitles, that is totally fine. The story will make just as much sense without the subtitles, without knowing what they're saying. So where could you find me? Well, check out the podcast on Apple, on Spotify, I believe, and SoundCloud, and for the Apple podcast, it should be on places like Overcast and such like places like that. So yeah, check us out on that. Check me out on Letterboxd at William F. Check this podcast's Facebook page at the Movies with William Fletcher. Check us Check out our Instagram at the Movies William Fletcher. Feel free to email us to get in contact. Just at the Movies Will Fletcher, I think it should be. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for this. I will be launching a website hopefully soon. I know I say this at every episode, but hopefully we will have a website up soon, and I might just do like a sort of quick mini sort of thing explaining what's on the website and everything. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. Thank you all for listening. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Goodbye.